I'm going to make a few introductory comments. So welcome to everybody. Please remember that this meeting is being live streamed, even though the only person at the moment on the live stream is a live streaming officer, Anna Jessler. I'm asked to remind you to mute your microphones, but we haven't got any microphones, so we don't need to do that. We're going to assume that you've all read all the papers in advance, so we're not going to read them out, but in any great length on each item. We're just going to get a brief introduction and then go straight into the item. So the first item is apologies for absence. I don't think we've got any. It's the tenants.
List one.
The representative of tenants, Louise Warner, has given her apologies, and we haven't actually heard from the representative of the young farmers.
Oh, from the meeting. But lovely to see you, Lou.
Thomas. Yes, the representative. We don't have a representative of the young farmers present. But all the committee members present. Can I thank you all for coming and give a brief explanation of, don't need to minute any of this, Wendy, but when I was first a councillor, I didn't turn up to a meeting without giving any apology. And afterwards, I think I emailed and said, terribly sorry I didn't come. And the reply was, yes, the meeting was incorrect because you weren't there and no decision could be made. Luckily, it was a meeting where nothing had to be decided. It was just to note those things, but I did then think, oh, that was a close shave, because if there'd been anything important in that meeting, it would have been a disaster that I hadn't been there. So my very first meeting that I chaired, at the beginning, I was a bit nervous about how many people were needed for a quorum. There were only 3 councillors present, and we were just 4 at the But that's why I contacted pretty well all of you and said, are you coming? I'm not going to do that again, but please, if you're not going to be coming and you know you're not going to be coming, let us know. And then at least then we can sort of check the button up. I'm sure you will. But apologies for contacting you, and I hope you understand why I was a bit ultra obsessed about it. Thank you. That was the apologies for absence. There weren't just Liz. Declarations of interest. Are there any members who want to declare any interests? I don't see any, so we'll proceed to the next item, which is the minutes of the 2 meetings held on in February, April, purely to approve as an active record. Of course it is. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, I've got something misprinted. We have had a meeting since the election in September, and are you happy to agree that they're a true record? Proposed by Councillor Jim Kearney and seconded by Councillor Connor. All agree? All those in favour, please show. Yeah, thank you very much. That's unanimous. And then there's no items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any. No, thank you. And then we go on to, thank you very much. Let me then go on to chair's announcements, and I'm not aware of any of those. So we can go straight into the revenue monitoring item, which is going to be presented by Debbie Haffenden. So over to you, Debbie.
Thank you. So the revenue report represents the picture from the 1st of April to the 30th of September. We have a target surplus for the year of £550,000, and our forecast expectation is that we will achieve that target. As you'll see from Appendix A, the expenditure remains low on some items, particularly around the building maintenance, but we know that's an area where we are slower to start in the year because of other priorities, and that we expect to spend to budget by the end of the year. I would draw your attention to point 3.3, where we identify the outstanding rent at this point in time. This is higher than we reported at last committee, and that's because we've just passed the most recent rent invoice period, which is at the end of September. We normally expect a spike in the figures, unfortunately, shortly after that rental period is due. And the team were working to pursue those people that didn't pay on time to ensure the payments are made. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Does anybody want to comment or question the revenue monitoring on month 12? 6. Yeah.
We do it quite comprehensively for last meeting. It gave us a good understanding of farmers when they get money, when they don't have money, it goes up and down. So I think we understand it now.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there is a concern on the committee that we are, tenants are not prioritising paying their rent as much as we would ideally like, but we also have there are steps that we are looking at to try and improve the situation. Yes, Councillor.
Can I just mention, Chair, this is the first time we've seen these sort of statements. Would it be possible to show the previous reporting period and the next reporting period, so you can see the discrepancies of why, so you can see a trend that rents are creeping up. At the moment it's just a figure and it could be a normal figure, but I'd like to be able to see the previous requirements for the next, so each time there's 2 columns rather than 1, previous and next.
Absolutely. If for the current meeting, I can refer you back to the notes from the previous meeting,
Okay,
which will have those figures to compare. But for future meetings, I'll absolutely put in a comparison column to see that.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Councillor, and then.
Could we possibly do an analysis of when we actually get paid the outstanding debt? Because it would be, as Councillor Jim alludes to, it's all about cash flowing from. It'd be really interesting to see.
I think I'm going to bring Dan in a minute. Do you want to ask your question, Kathy, first?
Mine's probably quite quick. It's 3.4, the tenant right valuations that end of tenancy. Some of them not complete valuations, not yet concluded. Is that in the normal timescale? They just haven't been done yet, or are there delays with that at all? Getting them
Again,
done?
it might be best with Dan.
Yeah, we've done.
Yeah.
I'll deal with this cost and cash flow thing. So the rent arrears is as the chair suggested, creates an immovable life. Many variable factors as to why certain tenants haven't paid their rent. The vast majority of our tenants are now moving towards paying by direct debit and then installments each year. Helped us improve our cash flow in terms of flexing those arrears. There are a raft of tenants who have left the estate, and we understand their agents and solicitors and don't look at paying basically there's a bit of trade-off with the valuation. Compensation due, we set up against your outstanding rent. At the time, they're going to put that money into something else, probably fund or whatever. There are some tenants who fell into rent arrears because their businesses were not going in the right direction, and we have a number of cases where solicitors are instructed to bad debts or potential bad debts. So that's there. And there's quite a big chunk of the rent arrears which was invoiced on the 29th of September. I've spoken with several of those tenants who haven't paid, and I'm not sure it's the accounting system, but several. We're trying to get that corrected now. And to be fair to those tenants, they contacted me to say, what's going on, do you not want my rent? Because I haven't seen my invoice yet. But it might be, some more teething issues with the new process, but we'll get that rectified. And there are other tenants, as the chair again alluded to, who have perhaps not prioritised paying their rents and are prioritising other factors, including investing significantly in improved infrastructure in the farms themselves. There are a number of tenants on here who are making substantial capital investments in the farms. It doesn't make it right that they're using, the rent they should be paying to support that, but it does enable them to improve the infrastructure, which will in turn enable them to earn more from the farm, as well as leaving a lasting legacy for the county council and for future tenants as well. So that's just a snapshot of some of the reasons behind. Okay, it is complicated, and as Debbie said, we are actively monitoring this and actively working with tenants to make sure we have confidence that our payment plans and payment strategies are in place, albeit those renovations can be brought. Moving on to Councillor Connor's query around right. So there is no fixed timeline for right valuations. There are many valuations which are taking longer than we would like to conclude. But in an ideal world, a valuation would be concluded by negotiated agreements as opposed to the more formal process with either party triggering an arbitration process. In the vast majority of our tenancy valuation negotiations, cost of referring the dispute to arbitration would greatly outweigh the sums involved in the dispute. Arbitration is quite expensive once you get legal representation. So we have allowed valuations to progress by negotiation, and we've tried very hard to avoid having to trigger arbitration on these matters. We are working with the agents to try and get our valuations moving more quickly. We are limited in terms of the number of agents who have the skills to deal with these tenancy valuations in this current climate, but also the interest in doing that area of professional work. So again, we need to be mindful of not pushing them too far and for more agents to turn around and say we're not doing any tenancy valuation. Yes, without them, we would be really stuck. And the other aspect is they are all incredibly busy, and then by their own admission, they'll often do the site inspection at change of tenancy, and then prioritise other work. And typically, on valuation day, 20th of March, that is soon followed by a fairly, that's been historically at least anyway, fairly these agents dealing with submission of countryside sewage applications, etc., but all of which have a fixed window of time. So they prioritise that work, and then return to doing the valuation work at a quiet period of time. So we are working to try and get it done more quickly, but we need to push carefully. That answers the question.
Don't see any more hands up, so thank you all very much. Before we move on to the next item, I'd just like to welcome Councillor Clest, who's joined us. Not actually a member of this committee, he's operates at a higher level. He's our portfolio holder. Very glad to have you here, Simon, and I believe as a cabinet member, you're hoping to stay on the committee as well. And perhaps I should add that Simon has been accompanying a small group of us who've been, namely Devon, myself, Hannah and Louise quite often. We've been doing various farm visits. Simon has been on a lot of farm visits, as much as anybody, I think, and he's really quite well briefed on some of the issues that come up in Part B. So glad to have him here. Thank you. So on to the next item, which is capital monitoring, and back to Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. So the budget available to spend for the capital spend on the farms estate is 1.4 million, as stated in 3.2. Again, to date, actual expenditure is low at 269,000, but there is plenty of work in the pipeline that does need to be undertaken, and that is being prioritised across the estate. We have no sales at this point in time, so very good. Is there any questions?
Any questions or comments about capital? I'm not seeing any. So, oh yes, yeah.
I just don't know, very big difference between how much allowed and how much we've spent so far. Is the work on track at 6 months and the bills haven't come in, or how's that gap?
It's Ladies Dan who manages the programme there, so.
Thank you, Debbie. As Debbie alluded to earlier, there is a finite resource in terms of capacity to deliver the widest possible counter-council programme of both revenue and capital works in the building surveying team. Whether we like it or not, the education portfolio tends to take precedent because they need to get those capital and revenue programmes of work on site primarily during the summer holiday period, so that the work is being done when the children aren't present. So the trend is for that programme to be delivered first, and when that programme is on site and being delivered, the surveyors will then move on to delivering other areas of work, including the farm to estate work. So we've always had, unless things change, we'll continue to have our work delivered later on in the financial year than other services. As mentioned, there is ample work within the current programme to deliver the budget allocation spend by year end. Clearly, closer we get to year end, more risk there is in that, and we've had a couple of scenarios recently which have pushed back our programme, but we're still anticipating budget spend by year end. So one scenario was we went to 10 went to the market using the county council approved list of contractors. 5 were invited to tender. Only 1 contractor returned a tender, and that tender was qualified. And unfortunately, that meant that we had to go back out to the market to get that work tendered. So that's caused a delay in that programme. Another scenario which has caused a delay is on a farmhouse refurbishment programme, where we're asking the tenants to vacate temporarily, moving to a static caravan temporarily. But the work was due to start in December. They didn't want to be out of the house in a static caravan at the Christmas period, which is again understandable. So we've agreed that we'll delay the start until January, but it makes delivering the programme by financial year end a greater challenge.
Thank you, Dan. That's all very helpful. No, I don't see any further questions or comments. So I think we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is management and restructuring issues. And although I think this is quite a straightforward one, but over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Only one item on management and restructuring paper today, and it's a good news story really. Our farm tenants at Merrifield Farm, Polesworthy, have confirmed that by the end of their initial 7-year term, they'll be able to progress beyond the estate into a private opportunity. So the starter farm process has done exactly what it's intended to do for them. It's given them an opportunity to establish a business, to demonstrate their capability, to build relationships with banks, and use that probation period with us as an opportunity to progress. So initially, they're taking on a share farming agreement over a 5-year period, and then through that period, they'll take on and acquire more of the share farmers' assets. eventually with a view in 5 years' time to be being granted a 20-year farm business benefit in the private sector. So it's a real testimony to them and a testimony to the service that this county council provides for new entrants. There's a fairly simple resolution, recommendation rather, is that when they progress in 2 years' time, 18 months' time it is now, we obviously need authority from this committee to advertise the starter farm to get on the open market to give somebody else the same opportunities that they've had. So we're recommending that the farm be advertised to on the open market as a starter farm tenancy for a term commencing 20th of March 2027 and terminating 25th of March 2034.
Any comments or questions? I'll just very briefly say that I was lucky enough to visit the farm with Dan and I think Councillor Clist and Louise, Councillor Louise Wainwright and Hannah as part of a monitoring visit, which we won't discuss now, that's part 2, but it's clearly a farm that makes an excellent possible starter farm, certainly has done for the city tenants. So as we visited, I think it's reasonable for us to comment that we think to re-let it as recommended is a good proposal. Has anybody got any further questions or comments? Don't see any. I think it's Jim now.
Thank you, Chair. In 18 months' time, if we basically offers a county council, have we got any guarantees that all this will still be going ahead? Because when you look at the way that we bring new farmers on, and we work with the farming community to get new people into working the land, for a short time that I've been here, I'm just blown away with the amount of work that we do as a council to help people into such a really quite difficult occupation as being a farmer. Be many guarantees that these things will still go on, because I think that this, when I come to this committee the first time, we never understood of. Now that I'm starting to realise what's going on, and you see the opportunities that come through. Have we got any steer as to what's going to happen in the
In a moment, I'm going to pass to Dan. This is something which we have discussed in the car at great length over the last 2 months when on the something like 20 farm visits that we've been on, or knocking off that many. Anyway, myself, Councillor Clist, Councillor Wainwright, and Dan and Hannah have discussed it in considerable depth, a certain amount of depth, and Dan knows more about it than almost anybody in the country because he's secretary of the national, whatever it is. So Dan, over to you.
Thank you. Big checks on trust. I think we are close to needing to go to part 2, if not definitely to go to part 2, if we're going to have any discussion on this. There are commercial sensitivities around this, I'm sure. So if you don't mind, Chair,
Good idea.
then I'd address this later in the committee.
I think that's a good idea. I think it's something that'd be good to discuss in the committee because we didn't in September, I don't think I can remember. And it's looming more and more. So let's, and we're getting through the agenda quite quickly, so we've got a bit of time to discuss it in part 2. If you're all happy, good point, Dan, thank you. So that actually, unless anybody's got any other points about this particular farm, no comments or questions on this particular farm, then I think we now go to item 9. A proposer that we should move into part 2.
No,
Oh, sorry, quite right. Sorry, Wendy. So for the Merrifield Farm proposal, Merrifield Hallsgrove, basically that we should let it. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Connor and seconded by Councillor Vanstone. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. So now to move into part 2, we need a proposer and seconder for that. Does anybody want to move into part 2? Because I do. Yep. Councillor Cockerham and Councillor Carson. All in agreement, please show. Yep. So we're into part 2, management and
Hold on just a second, I just need to clarify that we've got the